everyone, and welcome to the Vegas Legal Magazine podcast. I'm Mark Fierro of Fierro Communications with Tyler Morgan, publisher of Vegas Legal Magazine. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you lived in Las Vegas for any length of time at all, you remember the bad old days with prostitution, open-air drug markets operating in plain view in downtown Las Vegas. The turnaround, which began during then Mayor Oscar Goodman's reign at City Hall, continues, although it is very much a work in progress. But now, one of the pioneer businesses of the downtown turnaround, Hogs Heifers, a 100% business owned by a woman, could be forced to close its doors. Michelle Dell, owner of Hogs Heifers Saloon, joins us today. Also, Mikey Tomko, retired firefighter with Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, active in downtown events. And disclosure, by the way, Fierro Communications is working with Michelle as a client. Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
This is a real Cinderella story. It's not as if you wanted to come to downtown Las Vegas and turn on the lights down here, right? You're having a grand old time in New York City.
I was having a grand old time in New York City.
And what was that business like, and how well was it doing?
Well, it was, we had opened New York City in 1992. And we opened in what was the Gansevoort Meat Market, which is now the hottest, trendiest neighborhood in New York City. But back in the day, it was tranny hookers and drug dealers, and it was in the early 90s, so there were a large number of, fetish clubs, if you will, alternative lifestyle clubs. And it was this mixed-use industrial neighborhood of meat houses in the morning, and we really sort of opened in a neighborhood that nobody wanted to go into.
And then you blew the doors off.
We were the first business that didn't operate at the same hours as the meat markets, if you will. That was an entertainment business in that neighborhood. Everything else was sort of your super after hours into the early hours of the morning entertainment venues. And we were the first ones that came in and opened at our doors at 11 a.m. and stayed open till 4 a.m. and offered a business that, provided a degree of entertainment that was sort of challenged, if you will, the basic political correctness that was, taking hold of New York City at that time.
In cowboy boots dancing on the bar, right? And then somebody comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, we want you to think about Las Vegas.
Yeah, business had grown exponentially very quickly, and we were sort of blessed in the sense that there were a lot of film industry and television industry related houses in the area because it was an industrial neighborhood, and so it was a great place for them to have studios and whatnot. And as a result, we would have a lot of film crews that would come through our doors. And, with film crews comes the celebrities that go, where's the cool place to go in town? I don't want to go to the trendy spot. I want to go to the down and dirty bar. The crews would bring these celebrities in the door. And like anybody else, celebrities have friends and they would bring their friends, and their friends are often celebrities. And so we started finding ourselves, in the press a good deal. And we were on page six more times than I can count. Rush and Malloy. If you're familiar with the Daily News and the New York Post, then you're familiar with Page Six and you're familiar with Rush and Malloy. We were in the papers constantly. And then, of course, there was controversy and, variety of other things. We were leading sort of the wave of bringing awareness to a neighborhood that was otherwise just thought of as a, nasty little dark neighborhood. And so I would imagine that over the years, the press that we received when downtown Las Vegas started, in the early 2000s, started discussing, doing a revitalization project for downtown Las Vegas. They were looking for businesses that didn't need that were entertainment savvy, that did not need gaming to survive, and therefore they wouldn't pose a degree of competition for the casinos along Fremont Street, the hotels. Instead, they would help support the revitalization by providing alternative options for people that wanted to stay downtown to be able to go around downtown and do things without having to be pulled to the Strip, where the casinos would then lose them as gaming clients.
And it was then Mayor Oscar Goodman who had the vision to see sometimes loud and different and, the bawdy, boisterous. He loved it. He loved the concept, and they pursued you, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, at the time, the Department of Business Services, Doug Lean actually was with the city at that time, and he was sent, basically around the country to look for properties, or to, they'd have meetings about what businesses around the country that names were popping up that they thought they should look at, and Hogs and Heifers was one of them. And Doug came to see me, I'd say at least 3 times over, the period of probably 2001, 2002, 2003. And every time it was, we're creating this revitalization project and we're building a new downtown. And we have a fast tracking committee we're putting together of property owners and, city agencies. And we're going to be taking businesses by the hand. We're going to be giving big discounts on liquor licenses. We're going to, help you get your, the fast tracking is going to help you get through the process of licensing and all the permits that you need. And I kept saying, great, when you've got that committee together, come back and see me. Interestingly enough, at the very same time all that was happening, Binion's had reached out. And at this point, Becky Binion was running Binion's, right? So I don't know whether it was necessarily being run at a profit at that time. But nonetheless, they had called to see if we were interested. And I had never really wanted to be inside a casino because Hogs and Heifers is a very unique type of a business. And it draws a large variety of lifestyles and cultures, one of them being motorcycle enthusiasts. And one of the beautiful things about the meatpacking district in New York City was because it was an industrial neighborhood, there was only commercial parking, if you will, in that neighborhood. So there were hours of the day where there was nothing. When the meat market wasn't active, there was plenty of parking. And we had these great metal awnings, where they used to roll the racks of meat, from refrigerated trucks right into the meat houses. And so it provided great shelter when it was raining. Sorry.
If you own a bike, you got to be able to see your bike.
Yes,
Or at
and
least
people want to
everybody on
see
the
their
street.
bikes,
Yeah,
and they want to go
keep an eye on
outside
it.
and look at their bikes and talk about their bikes. I mean, these aren't,
That's half the fun.
junky junky two-wheelers.
Yeah, we're
These are,
talking about 50 to 100K. for
Yeah,
some
I
of these
mean,
motorcycles.
you could have a motorcycle outside that's some guy's everyday bike that, is a true diehard that, rides all the time. And maybe his bike is a $25,000, $30,000 bike. And then you have, your novelty riders and your weekend warriors and your doctors and your lawyers and your celebrities and, your business owners and a whole gamut of people
lot of
that
money
are
in
riding
weekend warriors,
enthusiasts.
right?
A lot of money in it.
Now, Mikey, one thing that I want to get a little background. Now, you were a dispatcher for Las Vegas Fire.
Las Vegas City Fire, correct.
Now, sum up, if you would, just how wonderful downtown Las Vegas was at this point. What kind of calls you're getting before Michelle gets there?
Lord, I am a Long Island Queens kid. I had frequented the original Hogs and Heifers on several occasions in good old Lower Manhattan, Mid Manhattan actually. So when I moved out here in 2002, family reasons, retired from the fire service on Long Island, moved out here. 2005, a friend of mine calls over. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "Do you remember Hogs and Heifers?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "They're opening one downtown." I'm like, "No way." So I hadn't seen Michelle in years, so I said, "We got to go to this." I said, "Can't be the same one. Cannot be. There's no way." Walk in, sure enough, she's standing there. I said, "You got to be kidding me." So, as she said, it's a uniqueness. It brings all different types of individuals and lifestyles and class of people.
What did the ground look like right at that point?
There was nothing there. And
The
that
trolley
was,
stop.
The trolley stop was the original thing. Triple George was next door, but the rest of the block was vacated. It was
And
nothing.
dangerous.
Yeah, I wouldn't want
The
to walk
Lady
down
Luck
there at night.
Casino was
Lady Luck
there.
was still there. Bought it up. There was nothing in it, so it was empty. So the only 2 businesses on the block were Triple George and Hogs and Heifers, which brought back such great memories of New York because it was on a street that really nothing was going on, which made it
Right.
perfect. And the events that she had planned that she was telling me about on the street were amazing. We got involved as the fire department. Our big things for fundraising are September 11th, Patriots Day, and St. Patty's Day. If you're a fireman, you're always out having fun on St. Patty's Day. So we wanted to bring that a little New York-ism to downtown by, hey, let's take our nonsense that we used to do on the strip, let's bring it downtown. It's more fun, it's closer knit. Look at this street, this is perfect. And then she had explained that they had the vacate order, so we could do block parties on the street. We had our bagpipers and we had the step dancing kids on the parade. sat down with Fremont Street Association, at the time was Jeff Victor and Marianne Beeman, and we said, hey, I want to do a parade down Fremont Street, not out in the streets, just under the canopy, stop at the 3rd Street stage. We have these 3 great step dancing schools with the kids, let them do a step dancing program, dancing to the bagpipers from the fire department and the cops. It was amazing. Then we marched down to 3rd Street, and we did what is now infamous, the Las Vegas Valley Firefighter Challenge Games, which are wheelbarrow races, tricycle races, hose bowling, bucket brigade, tug of war with bizarre rules, and just some other fun, stupid, hysterical games for grown people to have a blast on.
A lot of emphasis on fun. You always understood the power
Keyword,
of promotions. Fun, fun, fun. But in addition to that, even before you open the doors, we've heard from local charities that your plan included how do we help the community, right from the get-go,
Yes.
right?
And that's what
were
we
some of
always
those?
liked about it. That's why
Well,
we got involved too.
I was raised in New York City in the West Village in the late 60s. And my mom was a single mom, which was, a challenge, certainly at that time. She was one of the mothers responsible. A group of mothers, single moms, had come together to found Dancing Dragons, which is really the Montessori school system, is what it grew into. But at the time, it was all single working moms that worked the daycare center because they needed a place to put their young children while they were at work. And they had rented an old church, basement level in an old church, which is now very, very hot. I keep hitting your knee, I'm so sorry, which is now,
Cut that out.
I'm gonna rub your knee, which is now very expensive high rises and condos. And I grew up, we were poor. My mom was on welfare when I was very young. She later became a self-made business owner, and I grew up in the restaurant business. But we were, we needed the services of organizations in the city, in New York City, that were charitably oriented. I was a kid that used the services of the Children's Aid Society, which, as a bar owner in New York City, many, many years later, I became a contributor to. We do a toy run, and still to this day, even though we're closed in New York City, we still have a toy run that I fly home for every single year to work with the Children's Aid Society.
We talked with Nevada Childhood Cancer Foundation, and they said, nobody ever says no. It's not a matter of saying no, but it's a matter of actually doing the work. And one of the things that they said is that your organization actually follows through
Yes.
year after year after year, and has become a cornerstone of how they operate because the money that you bring in, the awareness that you
Yeah.
bring.
It's
Now, imagine this. The city got exactly what they wanted, and it was dead. Fast forward, there's a lot of energy going in down there. You're one of the pioneers. There are other pioneers, Tony Shea. There are certainly the guys over at D. There was just a whole bunch of energy that came in. They got
Downtown
exactly
project.
yeah, and things are going 80 miles an hour. It's still a work in progress. However, it's much, much closer to reality, Oscar Goodman's original vision, than it was back then. And then things started going sideways for you, including the closure of the hotel across the street for several years. And now that finally everything is running on 8 cylinders, it's time for you to get out.
Well, yes, and actually things went sideways very quickly. Originally, the Lady Luck was open in 2005, and they were not supposed to close. They were supposed to be, at the time it was Henry Brent Resort and Gaming, and they had just purchased the Lady Luck and the trolley stop. And we met right when they had purchased it. And I was meant and intended to be their anchor tenant. I held the most frontage in the center of the street. I had a name that was a draw. It was clear when we started our negotiation that they were putting in a request for a vacate order to turn a public street into a private street, which was 3rd Street, in order to be able to inure the benefit of the city and bring, sure, they would use it for valet, but majority of the reason for pulling the vacate order was that we could have street events. And they would be able to shut it down for festivals. They would be able to shut it down for a concert for one night or a multi-day festival, and bring business to Las Vegas. And it was essentially whatever eventually was going to be the Mob Museum was going to go at the anchor there at Stewart, and the end of 3rd Street would bridge the gap between Fremont and the 3rd Street promenade that runs along Fremont straight to downtown 3rd Street to what would become the Mob Museum. And 3rd Street was supposed to be the bridge that brought the two together, and creating an active life and a degree of activity that people could see and hear would draw a flow of traffic back and forth that would help bridge that dead gap that existed north of Fremont Street. And within 6 months, this was now, we're in 2005, we opened in July 6th of 2005 was our soft opening date. And 6 months later, the Lady Luck closed. For whatever reason, they decided that, they were going to do their renovations differently. Instead of doing it piecemeal, they were going to do it all at once. The economy bottomed out. They lost their financing. The hotel and casino completely shuttered and never reopened. CIM, actually, who now owned the Lady Luck, who now own the Downtown Grand, purchased the property, I believe, in 2006. And then with the huge, we're a $1 billion urban blight real estate investment group that invests pension fund dollars, union pension fund dollars, into real estate development projects. And their objective, as they say, is to go into neighborhoods that are blighted, bring an upgrade to that neighborhood, with the hope of servicing their investors, delivering dollars to their investors, increasing the value of property, and benefiting the community by putting locals to work and by creating an exciting element that helps a neighborhood and a community grow. Except, and then they benefit from the tax breaks that the city will give them, because they're going to come in and invest in an urban blighted area that the city desperately wants to see turned around. And then they sat on the property from 2006 until they opened in 2013. I don't even believe they started renovations on that property until early 2012.
There was a good deal of name
6
calling and
years
finger
of
pointing
dead time.
from Oscar Goodman, saying you guys are.
It was a carcass.
Yeah.
It's a blight.
That was the word he
It's
used,
a
carcass.
black canker sore on, downtown. I see it outside of my office every day, and
Oscar's words,
I
yeah.
can't stand it. And eventually the city said, listen, if you don't pull the trigger, we're going to fine you millions of dollars for the delay. And then they finally just started to build. But really, pretty much as soon as, they had started to develop what would become the Downtown Grand, their belief was, I believe, let's let the neighborhood build up around us until it's really worth it for us to invest the dollars to build up this property. And so as the downtown project started developing and Tony Hsieh came in and other businesses started to open and East Fremont started to grow, the downtown 3rd Street was still a dead eyesore. And
Except for
really,
your place.
except for Triple George and Hogs and Heifers and the pawn shop next door.
Right.
Yep. And, Triple George was at some point had lost, they were struggling to survive without their casino and hotel property. And they went down to only opening, I believe, on, a few hours in the night on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Maybe they did a Sunday brunch during certain seasons. Otherwise, their doors were closed. They didn't have the business to sustain it.
At some point, when they do come full throttle and they're starting up and they've really got designs on the property, one of the designs they have on the property is a design on your property, right?
Yes. An absolutely commercialized, spoon-fed, regurgitated format of Hogs and Heifers. And the interesting thing is, in my lease, it very specifically says that they're not allowed to open a business that in any way, shape, or form competes with my theme.
Now, how do you know this? How do you know that took place? How do you know that they had designs on your place?
So Seth Shore had come on board, Steve Wynn's godson, with Fifth Street Gaming, and he was to run the gaming entity, the gaming side of the property, and CIM was to run the hotel and retail sales part of the property, the boutiques and the restaurants. And I received a call, and Seth said, "Hey, Michelle, why don't you come on upstairs? We want to show you the design for the rooms, some of our concept ideas for the stores that are going to be, coming into our ground floor level." Great. And I come upstairs, and I am the first person there. And the receptionist greets me and takes me into a conference room. And I walk into the conference room, and in fact, just about the size of your, Vegas Legal Magazine sign right here was a diagram, a photo illustration of their concept, which was to open an urban honky tonk that would have country and rock and roll music, not new country, not hats, so to speak, but traditional country. They would have babes and barbecues, which at the time we used to have. One of the ways we created business on a dead street was to start doing barbecues, which were free to the public, and live music, which was free to the public. For me, it was never a question of going back. There's too much money in it. There is no return. You have to keep moving forward, and you have to keep upping the ante. And here we are. I'm looking at my concept that is exactly the concept that they're not allowed to do, not only on 3rd Street, but within a certain mile radius.
There's not a picture of you in this.
Oh no, there's
artist
no
rendering.
picture of me. They talk about Coyote Ugly, a Coyote Ugly style business, which that was another bar that opened in New York City that was somewhat of a controversy because in almost every single way it was kind of a teenage princess version of Hogs and Heifers. And so it was a very specific thing that they weren't allowed to do. And the second I looked at it, I was like, wow, I'm sitting there reading it. And, who should walk into the room? The next person that walks in sees it on the wall, sees me looking at it, and walks up to it and goes, "Oops." Literally, oops, takes it off the wall and turns it around. And I had already photographed it,
This
so
was
that
gonna be this would have been right across the street from you?
this was it. So just a few weeks later, I received a phone call from the planning division, planning department, and they had just had a meeting with Fifth Street Gaming and CIM about their project and their plans for, growth and renovation and what, properties they were going to put in. And the planning division said, "We don't hear any mention of Hogs and Heifers. Are you working with them?" And they said, "Oh no, we're going to buy them out. They're leaving." So I get a call from the planning division saying, are you leaving? And I said, "Not that I know of." And they said, "Well, Fifth Street Gaming and CIM were just here, and they said they're buying you out." And I said, "Well, that's funny. No one's made an offer." Well, sure enough, about a few weeks later, the then property owner, Todd Kessler, who's a dear friend, walked in and to my office, as he would every now and then. He'd say, "I just need a break. I'm just come down here and sit in your office and shoot the shit." Excuse my language. And said, "Okay, well, I'm just the bearer of news. I'm just the delivery man." He said, "CIM wants to buy you out."
Oh, good. How many $1 million is this?
That's what I'm thinking. I have a 20-year lease, and at this point, I don't know, I have at least 15 years left on my lease or what have you. And he said, "So what they want to offer you is to waive the $250,000 tenant improvement loan that they've extended as part of your lease, and $60,000. And I looked at him and I said, "So how's the wife? How's the kid? What's going on?
Time for the next meeting.
How you doing?
Gotta go.
How excited are you about the projects you're going to be moving on to? Now that, because they were still operating the property until CIM decided they would finally come in and, actually build.
Do you think they would have offered $300,000 to a big strong man?
Oh my God, not a chance.
How much of you being a business, 100% owned by a woman, how much do you think that played a role in the lowball offer?
I think that it's played every bit of a role. I think it's played a role in everything that's happened since they moved in or since they purchased the property. I think at the end of the day, they really never, we live in a corporate world now, and we live in a world of commercial cookie cutter concepts. and large companies will come and create, they'll sort of either build their own concepts, or they'll again travel around the world and find the clean cookie cutter concepts that they want, that they're then able to just continually stamp out and reproduce in different areas. And I don't think that.
But you think about it, but, smart business people, like the MGM.
Yes.
Like Caesars.
Yes.
Like the Wynn. They all do the same thing. They don't own their restaurants. They go, we're going to make sure that we make money off of this. We're interested in the lease play. We don't want to get involved with drinks and food and all that other stuff. We don't want the liabilities or anything. So we're just going to take a big check out of that. And this group is doing the exact opposite.
The exact opposite,
of what
yes.
the biggest players in Las Vegas do.
Yes, they haven't brought in a single one of their concepts from any of their other properties that, have been successful. They certainly have some successful properties. Instead, I really believe, first of all, they didn't do their homework. For whatever reason, they really thought, oh, well, this is just this, this nasty little dive bar, honky tonk, and this woman must just be this, poorly educated, white trash redneck, perhaps.
Hanging
I
on
don't
by
know
a
what
thread.
they thought.
They probably think you're just barely making it by.
Well, it never occurred to them that the woman that they were dealing with was traveled, educated, cultured, well-spoken, presentable, had been born and raised in the service industry. My mother was the food editor for Living Magazine for many, many years, pretty much up until Martha went to the clink. When she just wasn't happy with the way the company was being run. She's done cookbooks for, the likes
That was
of
a
Mark
pretty good
Bittman.
stock tip, by the way.
She's done cookbooks for world famous, world class chefs as a food editor and a restaurateur and a chef. My brother is an artist. He shows with some of the most famous dealers in the world. He's shown with Bruno Bischoff-Berger, who was the man that discovered Andy Warhol. He has 12 paintings that are owned by the Mugrabi family, which is the number one. They own more Andy Warhols than any art family in the world, and they are the biggest art family in the world. I mean, I don't think it ever occurred to them that they were sitting across the street from a woman who literally could help them design food concepts, could even potentially help them bring, a Las Vegas version of Art Basel.
Is it
to
that they,
Third Street.
do you think that they thought that they were doing so well, that they were handling their business so well, that they could improve with their management skills on your concept? Or
I think ultimately what they thought was the trolley stop was a casino, right? And once they broke that property down and separated it into different retail spots and packages, if you will, that property is grandfathered in. They can still have gaming on that length on the west side of 3rd Street. So essentially, in my lease, they're not allowed to build above me. Now, if I were gone and I hold the most frontage, then they would consolidate Triple George because they own it potentially, even buy out the pawn shop, and then have this empty lot, and they would have this huge stretch of a block that they could turn into more of a casino property and then build rooms above it. And yes, I think that they strongly believed that they would clean up the concept, and therefore, in their opinion, make it more digestible to middle America. And at the time when they first opened, they were really courting the Asian market. That was a big thing for them. When they first opened, they didn't want my customers on their side of the street. In fact, they posted security to prevent my customers. We had our anniversary party and our annual 5-day motorcycle event 2 weeks before they opened their property.
they were going to pull Asian from
That was their
California
objective
Club and-
initially. If you go back and read the articles, this was originally their focus, was to pull an Asian market. And they felt that motorcycles and my customer base would be a deterrent to that market. It's not what people wanted to see. Ultimately, I don't think that they have their thumb on the pulse. I don't think they ever realized that downtown Las Vegas was an active area that, despite it being a blight, it still had its customer base. And you can't move into it. When they opened, they hired, folks from, not Tavern on the Green, Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the property, but a super high-end property that,
Four
and
Seasons.
the Four Seasons, thank you. They brought in people that had worked with Four Seasons properties, and they really believed that, they were going to be an elitist property. And my belief is that when a neighborhood is in transition, in particular, you have to you can't alienate the customer base that already exists. You have to find a way to bridge the gap between the customer base that exists and the customer base that you want. Otherwise, you're sitting on an empty space with a customer base that does not exist yet, not spending time in your property.
That's interesting. Downtown San Diego, which was a template for much of the turnaround in Southern Nevada,
Yes.
They had a very, very nice hotel in the W, which crashed.
Yes.
Because it was a little too cool
It
for
was-
the room. How much, we've talked about what you brought to the table and the amount of traffic that you brought to the table. And by the way, we've spoken to business owners downtown who have some very nice things to say about the fact that you bring people downtown who then end up in their hotels and their casinos.
We just had during the World Series of Poker, we've had 4 of our regular year-round customers that come into Vegas for WSOP every year. One of them was at the ESPN table. All wearing Hogs gear. I mean, you go watch it, you'll see hats and T-shirts, and
A lot of overlap between you and Las Vegas. Not
Absolutely.
too cool for the room, right?
No,
Dialed in.
we have a customer that comes in the door that may, have an average income of $30,000 to $40,000 a year, just as much as we have customers that are business owners and, have a very high income status and make millions of dollars a year.
So if there's synergy, the best thing that can happen in business is that there's synergy. If you brought the synergy to the table, have they brought energy to the table that has helped you out? Are they the spinning wheel, the momentum?
I want to give them a tiny bit of credit. They did a food truck event on the street that I liked. I liked it because it brought people to the street. I didn't like it because when I have an event on the street, they won't allow me to have food trucks because they say it interferes in their restaurant business and will take business away from them. So I think it's a double standard. Given, with the exception of the food truck event, no, there's nothing that they have done other than provide hotel rooms. That, in my opinion, has added growth to the neighborhood. They made a lot of promises to the city. The city gave them the rights to a large parcel of land that is north of 3rd Street that surrounds the Mob Museum, where they were supposed to activate retail and restaurants and garages and a variety of things that would help to support and further enhance the Mob Museum, which is Oscar Goodman's, baby. Which is fabulous, by the way. And they've failed to do any of that. They're sitting at the end of the northern end of 3rd Street, closer to Stewart, what they call the commissary, which is a property that I could, easily give them 10 different concepts to put in it, including a revolving door of concepts, if you will, and uses and multi-use spaces that they could activate, bring people down and earn money off of. And they haven't even, everything that they've put in there has failed. They're not very, I don't know what they're doing with the property. They're sitting on garages that they haven't, really brought up to speed.
The stores on the promenade.
Well, they have a storefront on the northern end of the Fremont Street Promenade, the 3rd Street Promenade. So half of that street is owned by the city. The northern half of the Fremont Street, 3rd Street Promenade is owned by the city still. And the southern half of that particular length is owned by Fremont Street, by the Fremont Street Experience. And they have a storefront along that way that they've been sitting on since they purchased the property. My understanding is it's completely filled with asbestos, and they don't want to invest the money to clean it and actually put active retail. So they're costing taxpayer dollars by not having a retail venue on that street. And everyone else on FSE is beautifying. And FSE has an entire plan for a beautification project along that promenade that will be rolling out in the coming months and the next 2 years. And in the meantime, what is the Downtown Grand contributing? They're not even members, unless they've recently become members that I'm aware of the Fremont Street Experience Coalition.
So to bring us up to date to right now, it's just about, at this point, that Oscar Goodman's vision of turning around downtown. He used to tell, to back up for a second, I did all of his television for his first campaign, and Oscar used to talk about it's the core of the apple. You can't, if the apple starts, you can't, and I kept saying, Oscar, leave it off the table. Nobody cares about downtown. I told him that 1,000 times, but it's his vision. It finally comes to fruition now with the help from Carolyn Goodman, who's a genius. And now you're out because they're moving to terminate your lease.
Yes, they are. So their construction project was a moving target for years. In fact, for about the better part of 2.5 years, they kept discussing this. They were going to build another tower. They were going to, add they were supposed to add storefronts into, they were supposed to put a gym into one of their garages that runs behind me.
Right.
The old Binion's garage. They were supposed to create cafes and turn that into an active alleyway experience, a lot like some of the things that have been happening in the art district. They failed to do that, and they kept changing their minds about what type of construction they were going to do or what they were activations they were going to put into place. And for 2.5 years, every single time I would come forward with my event calendar, which I need to pitch during sponsorship season in November and December to the vendors and distributors that we work with in order to get them on board to help us provide the events that we've provided year after year. I would, every year present my event calendar to folks at the Downtown Grand, which, by the way, has had a revolving door of management. So as soon as you break one person in and you're all on the same page, all of a sudden that person's out, a new person's in. There is absolutely no proper introduction made. So every single time you're starting from scratch, and now you, instead of presenting to someone that you've been working with over a period of time, a number of annual events that they're familiar with, and now it is a seamless process, I'm in the position of actually having to repitch my events and convince them to continue to allow me to utilize the street for the use that is in my lease that I'm allowed to use. But to answer your question, essentially, they finally pull the plug and, not pull the plug. They finally pull the trigger and decide that they're going to do this project. We had been in discussions with them for a length of time leading up to the day they started renovations, and they had pulled a permit with the city, I believe in July of 2018, that they were building, and at the same time, they wouldn't give us a start date. So we're having discussions with them, and all of a sudden, in mid-December, Bill Doak, who was the VP and managing director for the property, straight from CIM, who I developed finally. We had one person on the property for over 2 years that we had a great relationship with, who was actually coming with us to city meetings to speak in favor of our getting, permits to do our street events. And all of a sudden, there's radio silence, and I get a text message or a phone call, 2 weeks later that he's gone. That's it, gone. And a new person is coming in, and his name is John Coletsu. And as a matter of fact, you mentioned the MGM and how they kind of really paved the way for bringing adult entertainment concepts, if you will. And I don't mean, strip clubs. I just mean more adult oriented as opposed to all, sort of family based, which is a term that Las Vegas took for a while.
Which Oscar always hated.
Yes, because, who's bringing, well, apparently a lot of people are bringing their children to casinos. And there are properties that are perfect for that. And the MGM Grand decided they weren't necessarily that property. And John Coletsu prides himself on, putting bodies into gaming seats and bringing excitement and entertainment value to an actual property. And we met and we talked, and, he said what he thought I needed to hear. And I was, sort of very upfront. And made it clear to him that I would, he started telling me, well, we're going to be closing the street. Actually, it was after they closed the street that we met. Literally, the day I found out that they were beginning their construction for a new tower on 4th Street was on January 4th when we got to work that morning, and there were cones set up all over the street, and they were in the process of turning the street that I'm on, downtown 3rd Street, into the sole use of their own valet because they were closing their porte-cochere in order to build their tower on the 4th Street side.
Which you would contend is the single most important asset that you have is outside.
The
because that's
single
what
most
bikes-
important asset that I have outside, it's not just motorcycles. We do a multitude of events.
And that would be the valet for the downtown Grand.
Only.
Okay.
Hogs and Heifers very specifically is not allowed to parking for the valet on 3rd Street. Our
Okay.
customers have to pay the $20 valet fee, I believe.
Yeah, it ranges between 8 and 20 depending
Between
on
8 and 20
what
depending
day,
on
what
the
But if
day.
they
time.
close the street, then you also can't have the bikes in front of the restaurant and everything.
Well, the street is what is called a surface vacate, which means that it has to have an emergency through lane. So yes, they can shut it down for a number of days completely to through traffic, except that they have to make it possible for emergency vehicles to enter the street quickly, if need be. And so we always sort of create the access points in the event of an emergency. But if they take over the entire street, so my motorcycle parking is able to park in front of me, but there's a good deal of confusion. There's no signage for Hogs and Heifers motorcycle parking. Their signage that, enters the street from Stewart is now just all about the downtown Grand and their properties. Welcome to the downtown Grand Valet. They're utilizing both sides of the street.
So for all intents and purposes, somebody on a motorcycle wants to go to Hogs and Heifers, they start going down there, they think they're unwelcome to bring their bike, and then chances are they either turn around and leave or they find a parking spot
Not only
somewhere else
that,
with a
Tyler,
bike.
but what I've seen is since it is now their valet, you have to deal with Uber, Lyft, and the cabbies. And
It's
there's-
dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Their setup
and
is
I'm
very
talking
dangerous.
as a 61-year-old man trying to cross the street. It's insane, especially like on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. What I've also seen is that the Uber and Lyft drivers have no designated space that is enforced. So what they do is they slide down the right lane, and I've seen them clip some of these beautiful motorcycles parked in front of Hogs because they're not watching what they're doing. They're doing this, and then boom, they clip a motorcycle.
Well, they're
They almost
also
knock them over.
understaffed.
Exactly. too.
But they're upside down,
Right.
so of course they're understaffed.
So do you think that because they want you out, they can't get you out? Do you think this is part of a ploy to sort of make your business so inconvenient to sort of strangle
Make
you?
your life miserable.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's no
so that you
question
guys
about
might
it.
be driven out of business.
I mean, I think that they were hoping in the 6 or 7 years of complete shutdown that they would starve me out. They have no idea of my resiliency. They've even put crosswalks in that directly interfere with my ability to sort of have a little bit of overflow parking for motorcycles on busier days or on, events that we do. We have now taken to renting parking meter spots from the city on Ogden, so that when we have, for example, we've done 3 charity events now where we have no overflow parking on downtown 3rd Street anymore. And so as a result, in order to just accommodate our participants, in order to raise money for the Las Vegas Firefighters Benefit Association or for the Nevada Childhood Cancer Foundation, we are literally now spending money to rent metered parking around the corner and hiring. I now am hiring more individuals to monitor that parking, make sure no one else parks in that parking, and to help the flow of traffic and keep it safe for our participants who are pulling in and out. But it's not just motorcycle parking. We have events. We do a punk rock hoedown during punk rock bowling. We started an event that was one band 4 years ago that has now turned into 3 nights of live music with 9 bands with, world-class bands coming in. Authority Zero is our closing act every single year. It's the Mint 400. We do a huge street event, which is a car event.
Those are really your people.
Those are everybody's people.
Yeah.
Everybody's people. The Mint 400 shows on every major sports network you can think of. They have 65,000 attendees. The average median household income of their participants and their viewers is, above $100,000 a year. Their average customer, their average viewer and participant is mid-30s to mid-40s. This is everybody's customer base. These are people that can spend money. And as the off-road industry builds, the UTV aspect and activation of the off-road industry has become huge because UTVs are affordable. And so now what was traditionally racing that was inaccessible to the middle class and is now completely accessible.
One of the things, I'm trying to look up this definitive article, and I've looked and looked. One of the things that they allege is they just don't like the kind of people that you bring downtown. But Mikey, in his past life and continuing contacts in the fire department, every dispatcher knows every problem place in town. Oh, there they go again. Now what do they have this time? What was the track record like at Hogs
Never.
Heifers?
Never. Never an issue there. We would get medical calls, legitimate medical calls, chest pain, short of breath, one of the customers inside, maybe somebody
Dehydration.
said dehydration in the summertime, but nothing of a bad nature, nothing of a altercation nature, nothing. Peaceful, quiet, pleasure to work with. They call up, we knew exactly who they were, they gave us the information. I had spoken to the security people and I said, look, when you call us, we need A, B, C, D, E. This is what, and guys are boom, on it, they're on it, they're on it. And it was always a pleasure to deal with them. I have many friends in Metro, and they said the same thing. Hogs and Heifers, never a problem. We very rarely, if anything, go there for anything because they're self-contained. They have great clientele. I mean, it's not a gang hangout.
It is a moneyed clientele. It's medium and up. Sure, you got a
It's
few
a
stragglers, but it's
middle
free
to
monster.
upper class
Absolutely.
It's America
neighborhood
Absolutely.
bar.
with a
And-
few millionaires thrown in.
It's
Absolutely.
a neighborhood bar. And that's what I think the Downtown Grand and CIM have not realized. That, and I had said this to her several times back when we
It's
first
more
went
than
there.
a neighborhood bar. I mean, we
Correct.
have what we call traveling regulars,
Right.
people that literally come to Las Vegas and now stay at the Downtown Grand. Our events pack the hotel rooms at the Downtown Grand.
We can go back to St. Patty's Day about that.
Sure.
We always had an issue where they were telling us that our events with the fire department didn't make them money. However, whenever we did St. Patrick's Day down on Downtown 3rd, all the firefighters that come, not just from Vegas, Los Angeles, Sacramento, New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, we have firefighters from all over the country that want to come to Vegas to our event because it's different. It's fun, it's different, it's safe. We do the parade down Fremont Street. Fremont Street does an amazing show on the Viva Vision. We have the crazy games in front of Hogs and Heifers. And actually, I got to thank her for this because she was the one that came up with the motif of let's do crazy games in the street. and that's how this whole thing started some 8-9 years ago.
Well, we started talking about it as and Bruce was with us at
Yeah.
the time, and we started talking about it as sort of a
New York
playback
style,
to
like
these
what we used
old
to do back in New York.
types of things that
So
first
this
responders
year,
used to do.
we always put in for a permit with the city, and basically Fremont Street signs off on it because that's what we do the parade, and CIM and the Downtown Grand sign off on 3rd Street. This year, no. Fremont Street, no problem. 3rd Street, no. Here's what we can't give you the street. We can't shut down the street. I said, I'm not asking
They
to
would
shut
only
down.
give us a very limited portion, essentially what they
The sidewalk.
Not even the sidewalk. What they approved, we put forward the street plan which is essentially, with a few variations here and there, the exact same event street plan that we have put forth every single year since the day we opened for rerouting traffic on 3rd Street. There is a side lot on the west side of the street, which they use as it is now. They use it as an entry and an exit to enter and literally make 4 right turns. What valet company,
Doesn't
what
like right
insurance company
Right.
doesn't like a valet company that makes 4 right turns?
Only right
It
turns.
is the safest imaginable route. And they say that it's not possible. They can't accommodate that for a 1-day event, for a few-day event, for a 6-hour event. And essentially the only thing that they have now allowed me to utilize that the Downtown Grand will approve, even though the city of Las Vegas has approved this street plan and had pre-approved this street plan for our events for the coming year, if you will. They will only allow me to take my motorcycle parking area, which is very limited. It's only right in front of my establishment, and use this very narrow space to hold an event in while traffic is passing down the street.
Correct.
So
So
more
no
no
matter
9/11.
what,
9/11
their street
celebration.
plan
Well, that's another
is more
issue.
dangerous than any street plan I have ever presented.
Well, it's obvious there is a lot to talk about here, and we do want to have you back on again. And I do want to hear more about your promotions, because you have some big things that don't just affect that street; they affect all of.
Well,
Las
we have an
Vegas.
off-road racing team, Hogs Heifers Saloon Racing, that we just started, and we entered the Mint 400 this year. We have two world-famous, world-class drivers. We're in the process of a pitch, which I'm pretty sure is going through with cannabis.
And most importantly, the audience for that.
The audience for that is massive. So given that we bring about 250,000 visitors to our street annually via our special events alone, that does not include
That's bodies on the street.
That's just bodies on the street for special events. That's our Mid 400 party, our pre-SEMA party, where we have a 20-person world-renowned airbrush artist live art show. And all of the art that's painted goes to the Nevada Childhood Cancer Foundation for them to auction off at their gala in November every single year, which is their giant gala where they raise funds. I mean, every single event that we have has a charitable entity that benefits from it. And we don't pay people to become involved in our events. If we have celebrities that come down, if we have renowned artists that come down, they call us to ask to be involved.
They're being nice people.
They bring their sponsors on board because they're so enthusiastic about our events. We have a unique touch. You know, we always say it's controlled chaos. I do want to say on the safety issue, I can sit here with confidence and say to you straight that there is not a single member of this city, of the city council, of the city licensing division, of Metro, or the fire department that would say that Hogs and Heifers is a dangerous place, that it is a problemed establishment. There is only one business in downtown Las Vegas that has anything negative to say about Hogs and Heifers, and that is the Downtown Grand, because they want my spot.
And with that, we call it a day. I sincerely want to thank you, Michelle Dell, owner of Hogs and Heifers Saloon, Mikey Tomko, retired firefighter, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, and Tyler Morgan, publisher of Vegas Legal Magazine. If you remember to like, share the Vegas Legal Magazine podcast on Facebook. Also catch us on YouTube, iTunes, or my personal favorite, Stitcher. And for all of you out there with a story idea, or an axe to grind, get a hold of Vegas Legal, the leading magazine in Southern Nevada legal market. You can call Tyler at
702-222-3476.
Reach out, tell us, tell your friends. Have a good one. We're out of here.